friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
We are coming at you live on location. And by live on location, I mean, Jake, at least one half of us is coming at you from a scenic spot. How's it going?
It's going well. And by scenic, I'm sure you mean my lovely overlook of my neighborhood, from which I can see the car that my neighbors have not moved in 6 months.
That is wonderful. I mean, gotta love the heartland, don't you?
You pay for the ambiance, you know?
You really do. You definitely don't need to pay for the Ritz because you are living on the edge of the heartland there, man. It is glorious. The amber waves of grain are everything that they've been written out to be.
Well, and for those who picture Nebraska a certain way, I do want to just state that, like, I'm in a really interesting place where if you went 15 minutes in one direction, you would be in the middle of a cornfield. That's correct. But if you went 15 minutes in the other direction, you would be in the middle of some gang warfare. So it's an interesting little intersection that I live at here.
You were in the middle of the Venn diagram of within striking distance of the two different kinds of Nebraska.
Yes.
But I am actually coming to you live on location from my garage this evening. Typically, I come to you live from the basement, but tonight we're coming at you from the garage because it's lovely fall weather, and I love the way it feels. And also, my mother-in-law is visiting, and I don't want to keep her up too late if she wants to go to bed early. So there you go. You're
a good guy, Mitch. You know,
I'm one day at a time, man. I'm trying, putting my best foot forward. The geek dad life. I mean, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Am I right?
That's absolutely correct. That's my next tattoo. That's coming.
Exactly. So anyway, if this is your first time coming to the Watching Comics podcast, welcome. We love you. We hope you'll stick around and become our friends.
We're a bandwagon that is happily accepting new members, everybody.
110%. We need new members because our old ones are great, but let's be real. There's room for more because we're greedy. Anyway, my name is Mitch. My co-host here is Jake. And
hello.
We are happily hosted by the Geek Dad Podcast Network. So we are here as two dads that live in two different cities coming at you because we love comics and we love watching them on our screens.
Yeah, and tonight, that is, man, I'm so excited because we are not just revisiting one of my very favorite early episodes of this show. We are also following the time-honored tradition of the comic book film, and we are greenlighting a sequel long before that is advisable.
Because if we can't do that in the comic book arena, then what can we do? Hollywood Hollywood has just basically become a factory for sequels we didn't ask for, reboots we didn't ask for, and the existing IPs of all kinds of spandex and capes and superheroes and whatnot. So we're here to relish in that. So yeah, if Jake, this is your podcast and we are celebrating the grandiose excess of comic book entertainment. So if you want a sequel, then darn it, we're going to do it. And we're going to make it happen. That's probably to the full extent of my clout right there. So.
Yeah, that's about it. So we're tonight's the night. We're revisiting the Shut Up and Give It to Me for those who missed out on the first round. Mitch, tell them what we got.
I feel like we need a theme song for that, right? Like,
we need sound effects and drops and stuff.
Yeah, something like some 80s hair band metal stuff of like, shut up and give it to me. I don't know. Is that even a thing? Yeah, exactly. Man. Maybe we should just do that. I should just get a track of you making that sound.
Oh, that's not a bad idea, actually.
Shut Up and Give It to Me, Volume 2.
So this is it. Yeah, the rules are that neither of us is going to follow. 2 picks apiece for something comic book related we'd like to see brought to the screen in some way or the other. And, like I said, I think we're both going to break the rules and throw out an honorable mention. But I loved this episode the first time we did it. I absolutely loved this concept. It was some of the most fun I've had, and I've had a lot of fun doing this. And it was also a great excuse to just bury myself in comic books for a week, calling it research.
Exactly. It was a lot more credible with the misses at your home and my home. It was great. We were like, hey, I'm doing this for work, honey. It's going to make sense later on, I promise. I don't want to ruin my internet street cred. But yeah, back when we were young and carefree and still wet behind the ears, in April of this year, we did an episode called Shut Up and Give It to Me. And we just kind of played out a couple of things that we would love to see on screen that we don't think are coming to the screen anytime soon. So we had our usual production meeting, aka texting strand that's just been going on for the last 6 months. And Jake was like, let's do Shut Up and Give It to Me again. And I was like, that's a great idea. So here we are. We're shutting up and giving it to you.
But maybe not in that order. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know either. So anyway, Jake, you said you had an honorable mention. Of course, going into this episode, we're going to hold each other to 2 picks because obviously, if we really wanted to, we could do a whole Ken Burns documentary style approach to this and just list off everything that we would love to see on screen. But
yeah, in all honesty, that episode could just be us listing. We wouldn't even give descriptions. We would just take turns naming things for an hour.
Yeah, and it would be just as long as the Vietnam series that's been getting lots of laud and adoration. So, and as far as I'm concerned, 2 very different things. So,
yes.
Anyway, but we were holding each other to a hard 2, and then right before we jumped on to record, Jake was like, yeah, I'm going to cheat, and I have an honorable mention. So we're going to go ahead and let Jake break the rules right out of the gate and get us rolling. Jake, what is your almost shut up and give it to me? Maybe it's not a shut up and give it to me. It's a shh, may I have it, please?
It's kind of a shut up, you gave it to me, because mine actually has kind of already been done. And it was done well, so that's why this didn't make the list.
Okay, hold on. just in a vacuum, if we're just taking we're doing an episode of things that we would love to see on screen. So I'm going to talk about the one that we got, and it was really good. I don't have any complaints. Here we go.
So I had wow, when you frame it that way. So
I'm not trying to be a jerk. I just thought it was funny.
No, I agreed. Please call me out. It's what we're here for. Yeah, I mean, if we're going to start listing my problems, I thought yesterday I called November 25th Guy Fawkes Day on the production meeting and didn't catch myself for like an hour. So,
I said I wasn't going to throw you under the bus, so I'll just let you stand alone there. I'm gonna be.
I will throw me under the bus because I swear to all that is good, I actually did the rhyme. I said, "Remember the 25th of November," like an idiot in my car. So the thing that I would have done, except it's been done well already, is actually, it is X-Men 2. But X-Men 2 draws a lot of its inspirations, but changes them from a story called God Loves, Man Kills. And God Loves, Man Kills is such a great X-Men story that X-Men 2 is a great movie, but it's one of the very best X-Men movies. It sets a standard for its era. But if I was just going to judge it as an adaptation of that story, it doesn't quite hold up, because the character that we now know as General or Colonel Stryker, whichever it is, the military guy, in the comic is actually like a crazed televangelist type. And he's trying to motivate his followers he's trying to tell them mutants are from Satan, and he gets this religious fury going. And that gets contrasted really beautifully with Nightcrawler, who looks very demonic, but is actually probably the most spiritual of all the X-Men. And so actually, I think he was Pope once, is how spiritual Nightcrawler is. And
if the papacy was missing anything, it is a blue mutant. Let's be real. Can you imagine him rocking out in the Pope mobile with the Batman hat on?
Well, and to be clear, I think he had some sort of a device that made him look less mutant-y, but of
course he did.
Yeah, but
because people couldn't just accept the blue Pope. They couldn't.
Right.
They couldn't meet him halfway.
Yeah, we're just not ready for that. We've made a lot of progress, but blue people as Pope, we're just not there yet.
Yeah, we'll take Pope John Paul Nightcrawler, but if he looks like the Blue Man Group, we're out.
Anyway, if I were going to do an honorable mention, that's mine. I would really love to see a more true to the original vision adaptation of God Loves, Man Kills, where and I don't want them to redo X-Men 2 because I think it's pretty okay how it is. I'm not there to say that needs changing, but maybe take those ideas of the spiritual realm of it, and maybe it's because of my own professional background, having been in ministry for so long, and it really spoke to me when I was younger, this contrasting the hypocrisy of Stryker from a religious standpoint with, Nightcrawler's purity of faith was a really powerful thing for me when I first read it. And so I would really enjoy a more true adaptation of that. That's my honorable mention.
That's a great pick. One little side note on that. Obviously, we talked about this before, how X2, at least in my mind, X2 is still the crown jewel of the whole X-Men saga that we have in movies. And it's just really interesting. I think I've put this on an episode or two before that I am not anywhere close to your stratosphere of familiarity with the actual X-Men comics. That's just one thing that I didn't get into comic book wise. I was reading a lot of other things in my formative years, but I always watched the Saturday morning cartoon, and I obviously have seen all of the X-Men movies multiple times. So I'm invested, just not nearly as much as you have. That said, I have not revisited God Loves, Man Kills in a long, long time, and I feel like I need a refresher because what you've said is just so interesting to me, how in a vacuum, cinematically, the movie can be darn near brilliant and arguably the best single installment from a long series of movies and still leave you satisfied with it and still wanting something a little bit more just because the source material is that good.
Yeah, and I think that was part of my hesitance with, I didn't want to go further than an honorable mention, because I certainly don't want to appear like I'm saying X-Men 2 isn't brilliant, because it is. I just, it left me desiring something else as great as it was.
True dat. So there you go. That's the shut up and give it to me thing that we've seen already but want to see again. Yeah, I'm down. Okay, cool. I don't have an honorable mention because, Jake, unlike you, I play by the rules and I believe in fairness and I believe in doing what is expected of you. So I just have two picks. Sorry, listeners, left you stranded, I guess. So he sounds really broken up over this. So I guess actually I should take all that back because I am going to cheat a little bit, but it was kind of out of ignorance. I wanted to pick the two things that I read this year that I loved the most as far as comic books are concerned. And so I wanted to talk about them. And then I realized doing a little bit of extra research yesterday that one of them has been picked up by Sony to eventually be a movie, which is both good news and bad news because it's Sony doing a comic book movie. But I was not aware of that until yesterday. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it in here because it's worth talking about. And really, they don't have much beyond just a contract with who's going to write it. They don't have anything else as far as stars or anything. It's pretty early on. So anyway, gave a shout out to this one a couple episodes ago. I really want to see the first run from 2016 of this character all by herself. I want to see the Faith comic book from Valiant Entertainment put up on screen. I actually got into this because I was reading up just a couple of different things and came across this title multiple times and knew that it was interesting to me. And as I've been building my daughter's comic book collection, my daughter is 2.5 years old, and I'm slowly building up a comic book collection of comics that I think would be good for her to enjoy from a feminist side of things and an empowerment side of things, as well as entertainment. She's obviously not old enough to truly appreciate them yet. I don't know how old she's going to be when I give them to her, but it's been a fun, cool little project for me as a dad to slowly add some things to this. And then if she shows interest in it later, then we can really share this thing together. So everything I had read about Faith had said that this seemed like it was going to be something that would be really worthwhile, especially for a impressionable female to read. So I was like, yeah, definitely get it. So I got the first 4 major installments of it from the first run from 2016. And it was really, really good. It was both familiar, but also refreshingly new at the same time. Jake, I don't know if you had a chance to check any of that out.
I have not. I'm familiar with the character. I've not had a chance to read any of Faith yet, but I've not heard a bad thing about it. And it's definitely on my list of things to get to.
So she has a little bit of classic comic book trope, but also at the same time, she's breaking the mold a little bit in a way that isn't so outlandish that you can't really follow it. It's still very realistic and relatable, which I think is really cool. But anyway, she was raised by her grandmother after her parents died at a car crash. So, that sort of thing. But outside of that kind of drama, there really isn't anything terribly her life, which is kind of nice. At the same time, she's got this ability to fly and carry things in her flight path. Like she has this orbit or this gravitational pull for a certain reach of time that things can like follow her, so she can like grab and manipulate things or carry things with her from behind without actually having to carry them while she's flying, which is kind of cool. And she flirts a little bit with psychokinetic telekinesis type of stuff, and a little bit of extra strength. So she's got some really familiar things, but she's also very self-sufficient, self-sustaining, and she is a plus-size superhero. So yeah, she's blonde, but she's also going to have curves, and she's going to look a little bit healthier than girls with thigh gaps and unnecessarily large, breasts, those sorts of things. So she's just a realistic American woman who isn't apologizing for the way she looks or how she feels, and she is one of those characters that is influenced by what she saw in the 90s, loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer, loved Saturday morning cartoons of superhero ilk. So it's like you're watching a superhero that became a super, not just because of the special gifts that she had, but also because she just really wanted to be influenced by the culture, which I think is cool. But the run of comics is pretty incredible. And I can see why I listed on so many of the best lists from 2016, and I am super excited to share it with my daughter. But I just feel like before I realized that Sony had put together a contract for this movie, I was like, this needs to be on the big screen, like not just a Netflix series, but this needs to be on the big screen. And it's like the easy choice would be Rebel Wilson to play this character because Jake, if you've seen any of the pictures of Faith, you'd be like, okay,
she looks like her.
Yeah, they're doppelgangers easily, and Rebel Wilson can bring the kind of humor but range of versatile performance to it at the same time while having enough of a reputation that she brings credibility to the project. I just feel like it checks all of the boxes. So Faith is one that, for all the reasons why we love what Wonder Woman did for the industry and all the reasons why we're going to get excited for the Birds of Prey movie and Captain Marvel and those sorts of things, Faith can do that while making it even more relatable and even more groundbreaking for a series of things, and empowering girls and women to be comfortable in their skin and to see her being self-sufficient and a journalist and a superhero and, just unafraid to be who she unequivocally really is. I just think that's wonderful. And it's an incredibly well-written story. And I'm assuming that the 2016 run is really where they're going to be finding their inspiration, because that's where most of the real estate is. So I want to see Faith Herbert in her own movie, even though Sony is already putting things together to make it happen.
I think that's legit. And like I said, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but everything you're saying is right in line with what I've been told about it before. And it just, every endorsement I get on it makes me more excited to go and read this thing. So even, sight unseen, just trusting the people that recommend it to me, present company included, I think that a Faith movie is something I'd go see, definitely.
110%. And with the Sony bit, I mean, high risk, high reward. I mean, Sony has
That's exactly right.
Sony has burned us so many times, but also their deal with Valiant Entertainment in a nutshell has been pretty well. I mean, Valiant is responsible for Baby Driver and Outlander and things like that. So those things that Sony has touched is good. And the first Spider-Man movie they did with the reboot, Spider-Man Homecoming, was a home run. So they've got glimmers. It's possible for them to do it well, but as we all well know, there's also a pretty strong, thick history of them pooping the bed. So I really hope that they handle this one right.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's high risk, high reward.
Totes my goats.
So that being said, honorable mentions out of the way. Talk to me about what's number one for you.
Okay, number one for me. Here we go. So this is definitely going to be the most quote unquote out there pick. And I'm going to be really interested. I mean, Jake, you know me. You've known me for a long time. So once, if you don't, we've met a couple of times. We've hung out. We've exchanged pleasantries. But if you're not familiar with this book, after I explain it to you, you're going to be like, oh yeah, duh, Mitch. Of course that was your favorite thing. But there's some weightiness to this, and I really hope that our listeners are patient with me a little bit on this. This is going to be an out of the box choice. Last time we did Shut Up and Give It to Me, I spent a lot of time talking about Nailbiter, which is an off kilter choice for what we think of for stereotypical comic books. Nailbiter wasn't Superman. It's not your stereotypical superhero, and Nailbiter was dark and gothic in nature and an anti-hero. The next one I want to talk about is actually from the Hanna Barbera reboot series. Have you been following that at all from DC?
I have been following it from a distance. I've not read much of it. I've gotten an issue here and there. Like I think I got something on Free Comic Book Day, so I can't even say I got an issue. I've been following it from a distance, and I have read some rave reviews about some of it. Some of it has raised some interesting question marks from some reviewers that I follow. But it looks like it's largely been a really interesting project. Tell me more. Talk to me more about it.
Okay, so I don't follow the Hanna Barbera project as a whole. From what I've gathered, the Flintstones was really the high note of what they've done so far by Mark Russell. It was getting a lot of love, but a lot of their other stuff just kind of fell flat. Their Jetsons reboot, their Lost in Space reboot, and then some of their random mashups of Speed Buggy and Flash were a little weird. So it felt like the Hanna Barbera stuff was one of those, like, it was a kitschy thing. Like it was, oh, this is kind of a neat thing that we own, so let's just do something with it and something new just to say that we did and just kind of see what comes of it. But the one specifically I want to talk about came completely out of left field and rocked my world this year. It is called Exit Stage Left, The Snagglepuss Chronicles.
Absolutely. That's absolutely for you. Yes. When I read a preview of that, I legitimately thought about, and I know it's not the same, but for some reason I went back to the one act that you directed with the guy in the park trying to beat people up and stuff.
Yes.
And I'm not saying they're in any way related, but for some reason that's where my brain went. And yes, that's for you. Absolutely.
110%. So here's a brief, if you're not familiar with Exit Stage Left, The Snagglepuss Chronicles, yes, it is about that Snagglepuss. No, it is not going to be the Hanna-Barbera cartoon from the 50s and 60s. It's really adult, but it's also heartfelt and it's poignant for our times, especially. So basically what they did is they took Snagglepuss and, They took all of his friends and his cohorts, and they turned it into, what if we set this in the 1950s in New York and New Orleans and told it through the lens of Tennessee Williams's life. So basically, Snagglepuss is a loose variation of Tennessee Williams in this. So he is a closeted playwright who is thrust into the midst of fame and struggling with crisis, and it's overlain across the big Red Scare that we had in the 1950s, especially in the celebrity realm of Washington really trying to crack down on famous people that they thought were communists. And it just sounds so weird and so random, but I promise it fits together so well. And a little bit of background about me, for those that don't know more about me. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in theater. I'm a published playwright and do voiceover work and do story reviews and all those sorts of things, writing dialogue. I direct theater every year. So this is a big part of my life. This is a big part of who I am and what I'm interested in and my very aggressive hobby. So naturally, this is a book that would be right up my alley and perfect for my perfect little niche of the corners of geekdom and nerdery as they intersect. But this, I guess if I were to sum up this book and what I would love to see it as to somebody, it would be, imagine BoJack Horseman meets like a dark comedy version of the movie Capote with Philip Seymour Hoffman.
That's such a good description.
It really is. And it makes sense because, Tennessee Williams was Truman Capote's cousin. But I feel like this would be wonderful if Exit Stage Left got the BoJack treatment. Netflix just said, I don't care what people think about Snagglepuss going in. We have deep pockets. We're going to get the right people to do it. And we're going to give you a social commentary, existential allegory that's both entertaining, funny, and visually brilliant, and give you a really interesting story. And so Exit Stage Left has all of the classic Snagglepuss characters, and it's got them just interacting in this world of what is it really like to be someone for real, but then have to wear a mask with your public guise? And what is it like to deal with nationwide paranoia, but still striving and desiring deep-seated connection and relationship with people, but then still have a little bit of the cartoon hijinks with a much darker tone of the comedy. I don't want to give away too much of it, but I think this is Bojack right now is one of the best TV shows out there, period. And I think this would fit right in line with that same kind of niche audience and the same kinds of things it's saying, but doing it more of a social commentary setting where if you do it in 1950s amidst the Red Scare with Tennessee Williams, then it's one of those things where it's like you're seeing something historical, but you also forgot how timely some of this stuff could be. And I just think, man, I would sit down and binge a season of this in a weekend and not even care. I would love my life.
So what I love about this suggestion is that I was really late to the train, and I literally started BoJack Horseman a week and a half ago, and I'm nearly done with season 3 right now.
It's so good. It is
right.
So good.
And you're literally hitting like when we're done here, I'm going to go hang out with my wife for a little bit while I do a little bit of work, and then I'm going to watch BoJack Horseman. So you're right there where my brain is as far as entertainment at the moment. My follow-up question is, would you bring on, are you just saying as far as the visual look, or would you want to bring on some of the creative crew from BoJack Horseman to run this thing? Because from what you're saying, it sounds like the tone might be comparable.
The tone is definitely comparable. Like if you were to read Exit Stage Left, you would be like, okay, this is a slightly less crude version of BoJack set in the 1950s. And the intelligence factor is upped by maybe half a notch. That's probably about it. I don't want the same visuals as BoJack. I don't want the same showrunners. The art in the book itself, I think it is some of the most stunning art I've seen in the last couple of years, because they've taken these characters that lived a really, really long life, just being the epitome of broadly drawn, jovial, like juvenile joy of those classic Hanna Barbera tropes. And if you look at this book, or you look at any of the frames, or you Google it, Jake, and you look at the way that they took these characters, kept them familiar, but then still made them look realistically almost human at the same time, I think that is just as brilliant as the actual writing and the concept of the book. Like, this is one of those rare instances where the art isn't just great, it actually magnifies the underlying symbolism and allegory of the entire piece. So I would love for them to try to mirror this animation as much as they possibly could. And I want them to actually take that seriously. I don't want it to be like that Killing Joke animated movie that came out a couple years ago, where everybody kept saying, yeah, they really tried to stay true to the original artwork in the book. And then you go and see the movie and you're like, this looks nothing like the original artwork in the book. What the heck were you smoking? But yeah, I would love for them to just try to take this from page to screen and do that work. Because part of what makes BoJack so interesting is that it's a modern era show taking place in present day, but the animation is just slightly less than stellar. And I think that's intentional. And I wouldn't want that with this. I would want it to be pretty high quality.
I think you've really sold me on this concept. Actually, as we've been sitting here, I've gone ahead and put the Snagglepuss book on hold at the library.
Well done. My work here is done.
Right? Yeah.
I'm the hero for the day.
That's part of what I love so much about doing this. Is it's a great way to get some recommend. No, I've heard so much about the Snagglepuss one specifically, and I've read a few reviews and spoken with a couple people at the local comic book stores that have said that while Flintstones is the gold standard of that line that everybody loved, that Snagglepuss was the true brilliance of it, and that it's really where the best work happened. And so I'm really sure.
I'm not sure Hanna-Barbera has enough real estate to be able to actually do this consistently. I think it's one of those things where this was a fun, like, B project for DC, and they just happened to find a couple of diamonds in there. But I don't think it's a coincidence that the Flintstones and Exit Stage Left are clearly the crowning achievements, and both of them were penned by Mark Russell.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for, well, and it's like what you're saying with the art, and this is really what I love with comics is the best thing for a comic is when the art and the writing work together. When I don't have to say, get this and just look at the pictures, or I don't have to say, well, if you want to understand the story, get this, but you're going to have to excuse some of the facial expressions and stuff. And when the art and the writing work together to become greater than the sum of their parts. And it's part of why one of the soapboxes I'm on with comics all the time is the lack these days of consistent creative teams where, especially DC and Marvel are really guilty of this, of just swapping in new artists all the time to hit a certain production deadline or just to get exposure for people, publicity. And there's nothing wrong with trying to get exposure for new artists. It's a great idea, but the constant switching of creative teams just becomes such a headache for someone who wants to follow these things regularly. And I say all that to say that when the creative team gels and when things, like our last episode of the Shut Up and Give It to Me, I picked Saga, and the art and writing there, that's my classic example where they come together to make something bigger. And so I'm right there with you. I've been looking at some pictures while we've been talking, and I had seen the Snagglepuss character design, but I hadn't seen very much of it. And it looks so cool, and it's just so it communicates so much, like all the stuff you're saying about BoJack Horseman meets Capote, like that image of him draped in the flag with his long stem cigarette holder is so much just that, and all of that is communicated just with the visual there. I'm very intrigued by this, and I'm super psyched to read this book now.
100%. Of course, we still have a little bit of the year left to go. I have a hard time believing something's going to dethrone that for me from the best 2018 read I've had. And I'm not just meaning like comics. Like, it's clearly the best comic I've read all year, but it might be the best thing I've read all year.
Bold move, Cotton. Well done. That's man. All right.
I should say it's the best thing. It could be the best thing I've read this year that was released this year. Obviously, I've come across some things that were new to me, but were obviously earlier than that, and they were great, those sorts of things. But
well, it's like when you're Go ahead.
I was going to say 2018, this is at the top of the list.
Well, yeah, it's like when you're listing favorite movies from the last year, you don't mention the time you sat down and watched, Godfather or whatever. It just doesn't come up. You still talk about the new stuff to you. So yeah, I think that's legit.
Precisely. All right, Jake, the time is here. Why don't you feed the listeners everything they've been waiting for? What is your shut up and give it to me this time around?
Okay, number one for me was almost part of why I wanted this episode was to get this one in, because there were three that I really debated last time. I picked the two that I did, and I'm coming back. I did Sandman and Saga last time, and I'm coming back around to the one that just didn't quite make the cut last time because it deserved to be there, but I only had 2 spots to give. And that is one of my very favorite indie comics of the last few years is Rat Queens by Curtis J. Wiebe does the writing. The art was originally by Rock Upchurch. It has since switched over to Owen Gieni.
What a name, Rock Upchurch.
It's such a good name.
Give a shout out to that guy, Rock Upchurch. Golly.
Yeah, the art has been after my spiel about creative teams, Upchurch stayed on it for the first couple, almost 3 years, I think, maybe 2, but I think 3 years. And then they switched over to Owen Gieni, who it took me a little time to get adapted, but I like it. It was just hard to leave the original artist, but they've been pretty consistent. There's been that one change in there. Rat Queens is this, it's basically just the elevator pitch for it is it's a standard like sword and sorcery, Dungeons and Dragons kind of high fantasy story, but with the archetypical roles given to women instead of men. It's so much more than that, but that's the elevator pitch.
You and I have talked about it before because it was not anywhere on my radar. And I confess, since the last time you told me about it, I still haven't gotten to it yet. I need to make a commitment to doing that before the end of the year. But I am so interested in it and so on board with just the philosophy behind the choices they make with it artistically that I really need to sink my teeth into it.
It's so there's, first of all, I want to sing the praises of this project start to finish. So let me start with just the concept and say that Rat Queens, I believe it began as a crowdfunded thing. I think it started as a Kickstarter and then it got picked up by Image. Rat Queens, just conceptually, it's so brilliant and it's so subversive, but it gets so silly about it. Like it switches so seamlessly and flawlessly from one panel I can be laughing hysterically to instantly it's got some of the deepest and best character drama I've ever read. The four leads are they're kind of these archetypical but in a goofy way. So there's a hipster dwarf that she shaves her beard off because all of the other lady dwarves have big beards right now, and then like halfway through the series she grows her beard back because all the other lady dwarves start shaving them.
Yes, get it done. Yes.
There's so like in your traditional sword and sorcery you need a cleric to be your healer, so their cleric is an atheist cleric.
Of course she is. Good
right,
for her.
Yeah, right, yeah. She calls on like the power of herself and stuff. There's just this total stoner party animal hobbit, and then there is the rockabilly sorceress, and it all the character drama between the four of them, and not drama in a cliched way, but the loyalty between the four, the friendship. You root so much for these characters that are such absurd send-ups of classic stereotypes, and it's just so good. The interplay between them, the way that every story arc is, it's like Weeby takes this really generic, really overdone kind of just fantasy story and finds a way to subvert it while doing so lovingly. It's clearly written by a fan of fantasy. None of it feels cruel in the way that it pokes fun at it, but rather it's very self-aware. And at the same time, you don't have to like fantasy to like it. You can just sit down and like good character drama. It's so good. It's just so... I cannot say enough good about Rat Queens. So I don't have in my head for this project a lot of ideas about necessarily who would play what parts. I started going down that road. I had a few ideas to kick around, and I decided I would kind of leave it alone because I think that it might be one of those things that works best as a premium cable show on AMC, or really so that you can get into some of the cruder humor. Probably it would belong on HBO or something. But I really think in some capacity, the person that I would love to see involved in this is Greta Gerwig. And I know that she's kind of a flavor of the week right now since Lady Bird.
I bow at the altar of Greta. I don't care if it's bandwagon time or not.
And that's just it.
She has never failed me in her career, and she has proven herself to be a phenomenal artist in every sense of the term. Greta, yes. Give me Rat Queens with Greta.
And that's just it. Like not all bandwagons are just hype. Some of them are legitimately, this person is talented and we all figured it out. And I think that more than any, and I kind of bounced some of these ideas off my wife because I didn't feel super right about bringing this very feminist, very female-driven project to the table without getting some sort of a female perspective on it. And my wife was on board.
And for the record, I totally trust your wife on like most things.
Yeah, me too. Most things. But she still has not seen Die Hard. But she
most things.
She made the really good point that, Greta Gerwig, what she's going to bring to the table is going to be this really good understanding of the female voice and how to make each female voice unique, but make it authentic. and she understands the interplay between those characters without it falling into any kind of a trope of its own. And she does things that I think she'd fit this project, because the brilliance of Rat Queens is that it's taking something we've seen before and it's giving it to us through a new lens, but a lens that shouldn't be new. And it's just kind of a refreshing series, because it really just gives you a very human look that just happens to be female, and that's the brilliance of it. And I think that's right up Greta's alley. And so I'd want to see her involved in some capacity. I don't know what that looks like, whether that's a showrunner, whether it's directing a couple episodes, doing some writing on it. I'm not entirely sure where that would fit. But I just would
show. If it's a show, then they would probably, do the Cary Fukunaga or David Fincher type of approach, where it's somebody who Greta would establish the tone of the show and would direct the first 1, 2, or maybe even 3 episodes, then maybe the final 1 or 2. So it's very much influenced by her vision, and everything in the middle is just kind of people bringing their own thoughts to this framework that she has laid out. But I think, to echo what your wife told you, what makes Greta so great is she's a phenomenal actress, by the way, but she's also a phenomenal screenwriter and director. And if you, not just with Lady Bird, but also with the movie Frances Ha and the movie 20th Century Women specifically, like those 3 movies, I think show Greta's chops in all 3 capacities. And in Frances Ha, she does everything. She helps direct and helps write and helps act. But what I love most about Greta is that she is able to take things that are brand new for us as audience members. Like, we haven't seen this before. It's a world we're entering into for the very first time. And she makes them feel already lived in a way that is established and organic and believable. And if Rat Queens is a hashtag squad goals type of story, it hinges on these 4 characters being believable in their relationship and having that history there. So if she can get on board with the comic book sense of it and have the right people around her to help her capture the visuals and the tropes and everything like that, because I don't know if she's a comic book fan or not, but she definitely can take the interpersonal side of things and the world building side of things and make it feel like it's both familiar but welcoming for us to enter for the first time.
Yeah, I think that's right where I'm at with it. That's right where my head is. So yeah, so that's pick number 1, Rat Queens by Greta Gerwig.
I'm down. Go for it. Make it happen.
All right. Give me your number 2.
I gave you both of mine, dude.
Oh, I thought you meant like honorable mention. And I understand. So that's why I'm the jerk here. Okay. I get it. Okay. Well, then my other one.
Jake, I gave you Faith and I gave you Snagglepuss. Is that not enough?
It's so much more than any one man should be expected to ever give anyone. And yet I found a way to take it for granted. Mitch, it's been a week for me, man. It's the 25th of November all over again.
Hey, all been there, man. Oh, heavy is the head that wears the crown.
So heavy. So my other pick is, man, this was a tough one. So spoilers, I'm going to be advocating for a 3rd episode, a trilogy here of Shut Up and Give It to Me's down the road, because it was
with
between
our theme song.
Something had to get bumped here to make room for this, and it came really close. So I'm not going to reveal what got bumped so I can save it for next time. But I ended up settling on a relatively newer comic. I think it started last year. I know it started getting collected into trades last year, but it's by it's a consistent creative team, and it is Rick Remender and Jerome Opeña. And it's called,
those are fun to say.
So good. Okay, so I don't know how familiar you are with Remender's worlds or his writing. It's usually pretty dark. Remender was a pretty big deal at Marvel for a little bit. His stories were really bleak, but they were really good. And then they always resolved to not be that bleak. But he ended up leaving what we call the big 2, that world of Marvel DC, to do creator-owned stuff more consistently. And that brings us to what I think is his most underrated work, and that's 7 to Eternity. And have you heard about 7 to Eternity at all?
No, this is brand spanking new to me, Jake. So make it happen.
It's flying under the radar, and I don't know why. It's not that no one's heard of it, but it's like you normally have heard of most things, but somehow Seven to Eternity is just getting right under people's radars. So Seven to Eternity it's kind of a dense concept, as much of Remender's worlds tend to be, but the premise, and all of this is packed into the first 2 issues. The premise is it's this kind of dystopian fantasy world, but it's definitely got Western flavors. So it's got sort of like a cowboy vibe going, but there's goblins and stuff like that.
I'm looking at the cover of the number 1, and you've got a woman who has a Robin Hood cape and a bow and arrow, but her eyes light up blue. And then you've got a guy that looks like he's straight out of The Walking Dead with a wife beater and a leather jacket and a revolver or like a rifle of some kind. And then you've got like the large like gremlin lord type guy lording over everything. So yeah, this definitely looks like it's wildly creative and has a little bit of everything.
So I actually didn't start Seven to Eternity until recently, and it's what prompted me to say the time is now to do the sequel, because I just wanted to rave about this series on this podcast. So the premise is that gremlin-looking guy on the cover of the first trade is the evil ruler. Seven to Eternity opens with the bad guy has won. He has conquered the world, and he's done it. He's this fallen member of for lack of a better analogy, kind of a Jedi order. And that's not exactly what it is, but it's this group of warriors they all have special powers.
It's Jedi-adjacent.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. And he's got this power where he can connect himself with people, see things through their eyes. But what his real talent is he's incredibly manipulative. And he manages to set himself up with some other followers who have different powers. And the short version is he takes over the world without ever truly being a warlord so much as just making deals with people. And he finds out what the number one thing someone wants is, and this is from kings all the way down to the little guy walking the streets, and he offers them what they want if they'll serve him. And when they agree to serve him, he's in their head now, and he can see everything they see, so they're forever loyal to him. So where this story begins is the dude with the shotgun you're looking at there, or the rifle, is this he's this, son of this family that refused to bow, and they refused to join the bad guys. And he, through happenstance, joins up with 6 others. So that's how it becomes Seven to Eternity, that they crash the party to take down the big evil Dark Lord. So mild spoilers, issue 2, they take the guy down. And that's where I'm like, right. And I'm like, what's going on here? So they capture him rather than kill. And Seven to Eternity then becomes this awesome Western kind of story. It's sort of this 7 samurai, Magnificent Seven thing, where there's these warriors who have captured the ultimate evil guy, but to kill him without killing all of his followers, they have to get him to this destination to do this ceremony thing. And so they have to travel across the world that he rules with his people chasing them. And the whole time, he's doing this awesome Hannibal Lecter thing and whispering in everyone's ears about how he's going to make their dreams come true if they betray the rest of the group. And it's that, as awesome as the spectacle is in this, the reason I want to see this brought to the screen is for those moments where the villain is sitting there whispering in everybody's ears while he's chained up. While he's on total lockdown, his power shut down, he's still pulling all of the strings and messing with everybody. And that wagon train, we've got to get this bad guy to his destination kind of thing, while they're trying to outthink this guy that's by nature a step ahead, is so awesome. I have to see it. And in my mind, the way it works, it could probably be a movie, although it's not wrapped up yet. So I don't know if its ending is going to be anything that is, I don't know if it's going to fit that model, but assuming it does, I think it would work as a movie. And in my mind, I've got for the lead, for your guy there, Adam, who's got the rifle, I'm taking your boy that you want for Superman. I want Viggo Mortensen just because he's such a rad pick for that.
Viggo.
Yes.
Dude, I don't know why Viggo isn't a bigger thing. Maybe it's by choice, but Vigo's a master, dude. The guy he deals. All right, keep going.
No, I'm right there with you. And as that misunderstood lone gunman type. He's so much what I want. For the kind of sidekick that's really over reducing a great character, this guy named Goblin, I want to see the master of motion capture who is not named Andy Serkis. He's like, it's like Andy Serkis is 1A and then 1B is Doug Jones. And
Doug Jones. Give me Doug Jones.
But the real winner is for the villain, for this gremlin guy. They call him the Mud King. They call him a lot of different things. I want Gary Oldman chained up on this wagon train, whispering his promises and his threats at all of the good guys.
Yes. Okay, I have a soft spot in my heart for Gary Oldman, even though he's a horrible human being in real life. But he is a phenomenal actor and still wildly underrated, even though he finally got an Oscar recently. The dude is incredible. Be really interesting. Do you think, just random question, going to throw you on your heels here.
Yes.
Do you think that character could be cast as a woman voice?
I think it's definitely possible. It's not where my head went just because I went with, I mean, it's not a character. So to me, whenever you want to do any kind of a change to a character's identity, I always think, is there anything about their identity that's tied to what we're changing? So like if you're going to race change a character, is it a character that's defined by their race? If you're going to gender change, like we're talking about, and no, I don't think that character is in any way tied to his masculinity as like who he is. I don't think it's vital to the perspective. So no, it could totally work.
That's interesting. So I think that's exciting. I love what you've mapped out here. It sounds like there is a lot going on, and it sounds like that there is an awful lot of world building, rule learning, and backstory that needs to come along with this. So do you think that this would need to be a multiple film deal?
So here's the danger with that is, to me, part of maybe, but I would prefer if there's a way, and there might not be, because Remender's work is always very dense. He's not quite Jonathan Hickman, but he's in that vein where his world building is always so deep. He's one of those guys, he's got a lot going on behind the scenes. I would like to see this distilled to its most critical elements and see, if so far there's 2 trades out with a third coming later this year. And I would like to see those first 2 trades could probably be distilled to about a good third of a film each. So, and it's not to say they have to be, but I think that if it could be boiled down to without losing any of the meat, sometimes it's fun to live in a world and know that there's more to it than we see. It's that early Star Wars thing where we knew there were all of these other worlds out there and we could see just glimpses of them in certain characters and in certain bits of dialogue, but we didn't need all of it built for us. But on the other hand, sometimes a work gets so dense, it's maybe like Game of Thrones, where to distill that to a 2-hour film would just never, ever work because there's so much lore and there's so much backstory that has to be explored to really get the most out of it. So
Game of Thrones has been on for 55 years and everyone's died twice already. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot going on there.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Yeah, man. Okay. So the Shut Up and Give It to Me Volume 1 was really, really good. But Jake, I think this one might be better as far as the variety and level of excitement I have for all of our potential projects coming to screen. Can we make all of these happen? Can we do that?
They have yet to give me the budget that I've asked for at any studio. And by that, I mean, they haven't answered, but I certainly would like to see it happen.
You stick to your guns. You deserve to be paid. Don't settle for less than what you're worth. All right. I'll give you a pep talk. You're good.
That's exactly right.
You're worth it, Jake.
Gosh, just one day they're going to do a documentary about the movies that you and I produced, and they're going to talk about this podcast and how just the right executive picked that sucker up and said, wow, these guys have got some vision. Let's get them on board.
I couldn't agree more. It all started in my garage, Jake. It all started here.
Perfect.
So Shut Up and Give It to Me Volume 2. There you have it, folks. So hit us up on the Twitters and let us know what you think. We love to know what you would like to see from your particular comic book canon up on the screen that hasn't been gifted to us yet. So hit us up. We are on Twitter at Watch Comics Pod, and that's comics with an X, Watch Comics Pod. And check us out on watchingcomics.com, on Instagram, Watching Comics Podcast, and on the Geek Dad Podcast Network. We love the Geek Dad. We're so grateful that they have us. But yeah, this was great. Jake, so glad that you led this week's production meeting. This one was important. We did good work today.
Yeah, I feel good about this. I feel like the world is just a little bit better than when we started recording.
And I can rest my head easy on that tonight.
Yeah.
We'll come at you next week. Thanks for listening.
See you then.
This podcast has been a production of the Geek Dad Podcast Network. If you've enjoyed this content, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/geekdad.